The cold hum of the human spacecraft echoed through the control room as Captain John Riley stared at the blinking red light on the communications panel. It was a signal he hadn't expected to hear, a distress call from deep in the galaxy. The message was weak and crackling, but the urgency was clear. Someone, or something, was in desperate need of help. Riley glanced at his team. His crew, a group of highly trained engineers and scientists, exchanged uneasy glances. They had heard rumors of distant alien species, but no one expected to make first contact so soon. The signal came from a star system known as Valtor 9, located at the edge of human space, a place humanity had only barely explored. "Captain," said Dr. Elena Vasquez, the leading scientist, as she walked toward him, her face filled with concern. "This message, it's not just a cry for help. There's something strange about it. It feels almost like a final plea." Riley sighed, feeling the weight of the decision on his shoulders. "We've received similar signals before, but nothing this desperate. Could it be a trap?" "Maybe," Dr. Vasquez said, her voice tinged with uncertainty. "But whatever it is, it's coming from a highly advanced species. I don't think it's a coincidence." The rest of the crew looked back at their captain, waiting for him to make the call. Riley's mind raced. He knew the risks, but he also understood the importance of their mission: to explore, to make first contact with alien species, and to help where humanity could. "Prepare the ship," Riley said, his voice firm. "We're going in." The crew moved swiftly to prepare for the unknown. Their destination was a distant, unknown planet, home to a species that humanity had never encountered. They were pioneers, stepping into the void, but this mission felt different. The desperation in the alien plea left a deep impression on Captain Riley. The universe, vast and mysterious, had a way of making humans feel small and insignificant. But this time, it was humanity's turn to reach out. The journey to Valtor 9 took days. As the ship sped through space, Riley sat quietly in the command chair, staring out the window at the stars. It was beautiful, but the silence inside the ship was deafening. The crew kept to themselves, each person deep in thought, wondering what awaited them at the edge of the galaxy. Finally, the ship arrived in orbit around the alien world. From space, the planet appeared almost lifeless, its surface scarred by what looked like violent storms. There were no signs of advanced civilizations, just ruins and craters. It was a sad sight. "Captain," Dr. Vasquez said, her voice tense, "the planet's atmosphere is unstable. If we're going to help, we need to act fast." Riley nodded, his hand gripping the armrest of his chair. They had no time to waste. As they descended through the atmosphere, the distress signal grew louder, guiding them toward the alien settlement. It was only then that Riley realized just how much they were about to change the fate of an entire species. The universe had rejected them, but humanity was coming to their aid. Whether they were ready for this responsibility or not, the journey had already begun. The human spacecraft touched down gently on the alien planet, sending up a cloud of dust. The surface of the world was a mix of barren plains and jagged mountains. There was a strange, quiet stillness in the air. Captain Riley looked out the window of the ship, his eyes narrowing as he tried to make sense of the view. The planet looked abandoned, with no signs of life, except for the small alien settlement in the distance. "Captain, we're ready to go," Dr. Vasquez said, her voice steady but filled with curiosity. She stood beside him, holding a small device that would allow them to communicate with the aliens. Riley nodded, turning toward the crew. "All right, everyone, stay sharp. We don't know what we're walking into. Keep your weapons on standby. But remember, we're here to help. No one acts without my order." The crew members, all experienced in the art of diplomacy and exploration, acknowledged him with silent nods. They were nervous, but ready. They had trained for moments like this, but nothing could fully prepare them for the reality of meeting an alien species. As the crew stepped off the ship, the first thing they noticed was the air. It was thin and cold, but breathable. The sky above them was a dull orange, casting an eerie glow on the land. The settlement was small, with ancient-looking structures scattered around. Some buildings were half-collapsed, their walls cracked by time and neglect. It seemed like a place that had been left to die. "We're not alone," Lieutenant Kira Lee said quietly, pointing to a figure in the distance. A creature stood at the edge of the settlement, watching them. It was tall and slender, with translucent skin that shimmered in the light. The being had large, round eyes that glowed softly. It didn't move, but its gaze was intense, almost as if it was measuring the human's every move. Riley took a deep breath and stepped forward. "Hello," he called out, his voice carrying across the quiet landscape. "We've come to help. We received your distress signal." The alien didn't speak, but it slowly began to approach. Its movements were graceful, like it was gliding over the ground. The humans tensed, unsure of what to expect. Would it be hostile, or was it simply too weak to respond? When the alien reached them, it stopped a few feet away. It tilted its head, studying them closely. Riley could see the confusion in its eyes, an emotion that made him wonder what had happened to this species. They seemed so lost, as if the universe had abandoned them. "I am called Tall," the alien said at last, its voice soft but clear, echoing through the translator device that Dr. Vasquez had activated. "I speak for my people. You are humans." "Yes, we are," Riley replied, taking a step forward, trying to bridge the gap between them. "We've come because we received your call for help. Your planet. It's dying, isn't it?" Tall's large eyes blinked slowly. "Yes," it said. "Our star is dying. Our people. We have nowhere to turn." The weight of Tall's words hit Riley like a punch to the gut. This species, so advanced in their knowledge, had been left to wither on a dying planet. They had no one left to turn to. "We can help," Riley said, his voice steady, but his heart was heavy with the gravity of the situation. "We've developed technology that might be able to stabilize your star. We'll do everything we can." Tall didn't respond immediately. It simply stood there, looking at Riley with a strange mix of hope and disbelief in its eyes. "Will you truly help?" Tall asked, its voice barely above a whisper. "Or will you leave us as the others did?" Riley could feel the sadness in the alien's voice. The veil had been abandoned by the universe, left to face the impossible alone. The thought was almost too much to bear. "We will help," Riley said, his voice firm. "We're not like the others. We will not turn our backs on you." As Tall stepped back, a faint smile crossed its face, the first real sign of hope in what seemed like a lifetime. The humans had made first contact, and now they had a new mission, one that would push the boundaries of their technology and their compassion. The fate of an entire species rested on their shoulders, and Riley knew, deep down, that this was just the beginning of something much larger. The wind howled through the ruins of the alien settlement as Captain Riley and his team followed Tall deeper into the village. The alien leader led them to a large, broken building that once seemed to be a place of learning or leadership. Now it stood in ruins, with cracks running through the walls like scars. It was clear that this was a civilization that had once thrived, before their world began to fall apart. Riley's boots echoed on the cracked stone floor as they entered the building, the rest of the crew behind him. Tall led them to a long table, where several other Veils stood, watching them with a mixture of hope and caution. The humans took their seats, each of them trying to hide their unease. They had come here with the hope of offering assistance, but the more they saw, the heavier the weight of their mission became. Tall spoke first, his voice low and calm. "We have little time. Our star is dying faster than we thought. We need help, but we cannot give you everything in return. Our technology is not enough to fix what is broken." Captain Riley leaned forward. "We understand. We've come to help, but we also need to know what we're dealing with. We need your trust, and for that, we need your full cooperation." Tall's large, glowing eyes met Riley's. "You speak of trust, But my people have been abandoned by the universe. We reached out to those we thought could help, but we were rejected. The other civilizations, they left us to die." Riley's heart sank. He had known this was a delicate situation, but hearing it spoken aloud made the gravity of the situation even clearer. These aliens had been rejected by the very civilizations they had once allied with. They had no one left but humanity. "We're not here to turn our backs on you," Riley said firmly, "but we need to know what you can offer us in exchange. We're risking everything to help, and we need to make sure we have a plan." Tall nodded slowly. "We can offer you our knowledge. We have advanced technologies that you have not yet discovered. However, it is not without a cost. You see, we have the ability to stabilize your star, but we need resources and protection." "Protection?" Dr. Vasquez asked, her voice filled with confusion. "From what?" The alien paused, glancing around at the others in the room. "There are those among my people who do not want to rely on others anymore. They would rather perish than ask for help from a race they see as inferior. They may try to stop you." Riley's mind raced. It wasn't just the dying star that posed a threat. It was the internal struggle within the Veil themselves. They had two enemies, the collapsing star, and the ones who resisted any form of aid. "We'll provide protection," Riley said after a long pause, "but we need to know exactly what we're up against." Tall's eyes dimmed slightly. "We are a divided people. Some still believe in our old ways, while others wish to embrace the help of others. The resistance will come from the leaders who have rejected all outside influence." It was clear now that helping the Veil wasn't going to be easy. Not only would the humans have to fight against the dangers of a dying planet, but they would also have to deal with internal conflicts that threatened to tear the Veil apart. Riley stood up, his decision made. "We'll help you, but we need to act fast. We have to stabilize your star before it's too late." Tall looked relieved but still uncertain. "You would risk everything to save us?" "Yes," Riley replied without hesitation. "We would." Tall's eyes softened. "Then perhaps you are not like the others. Perhaps there is hope for us after all." The humans had made their decision, but the road ahead would not be easy. With the universe having rejected the Veil, humanity now found itself in the center of a conflict between survival and extinction. It was a desperate bargain, one that could either save a species or destroy everything they had worked for. The sun was setting behind the jagged mountains as the human team gathered around the large table inside the broken building. The wind howled outside, but inside, the tension was palpable. Captain Riley stood at the head of the table, the weight of the decision resting heavily on his shoulders. His crew, along with Tall and his closest advisors, were discussing the final plan. Time was running out, and the fate of the Veil rested on their success. "Captain," Dr. Vasquez said, her voice breaking the silence, "we've analyzed the star's collapse. If we can stabilize its energy flow, we might be able to save the planet. But we'll need to build a device that channels the energy and redirects it." Riley nodded. "How long do we have?" Tall, standing beside them, answered quietly, "A few weeks at most. After that, the star will begin to collapse into a black hole. There will be no escape." Riley turned back to the map of the star system displayed on the table. It showed the Veil's sun, a dying red giant, surrounded by a field of debris. The star's energy had already started to destabilize the planet's orbit. The Veil's world was slowly being pulled apart. "We've got to act quickly," Riley said, glancing at Dr. Vasquez. "How long would it take to build this device?" "With the right materials, maybe 10 days. But the problem is..." Dr. Vasquez paused, her face tense. "We don't have enough of the right materials. The Veil's technology is too different. We'll need to adapt their systems to work with ours." Tall stepped forward, his eyes glowing faintly. "We will give you access to our technology, but I warn you, our systems are unstable. The power required for such a device is immense. It may destroy everything if it's not carefully controlled." Riley met Tall's gaze, understanding the gravity of the situation. We're not exactly working with a lot of options here. If we don't succeed, your planet dies. But if we try and fail, we risk the lives of both our people. The room fell silent. The weight of the situation was clear to everyone. This wasn't just a scientific challenge. It was a race against time. Every decision could mean life or death. Dr. Vasquez continued. If we can connect the Val's power grids to our energy systems, we might be able to stabilize the star's output. We'll need to work together. This isn't something that can be done with one species' technology alone. Tall looked conflicted, but nodded. I will give you what you need. But understand this, we have no time left. If we fail, we will be lost forever. Riley looked out the window at the horizon. The sky was darkening, and the winds were picking up. There was no time to waste. We'll make it work. We have no other choice. The human team quickly got to work, coordinating with the Val engineers to design and build the stabilization device. They worked long hours, their efforts fueled by a mix of determination and desperation. The Val's technology was advanced, but it was also alien and unfamiliar. It took time to understand how to interface it with humanity's systems. Tall and his advisors watched closely, offering help where they could, but the humans were in charge now. The race was on, and every moment counted. Captain Riley walked among his team, offering words of encouragement. The team had worked through the night, and exhaustion was starting to show. But there was no turning back now. They had to finish the device before the star reached its breaking point. This is humanity's solution, Riley thought to himself as he surveyed the progress. They might have been rejected by the universe, but today they would stand as the hope for an entire species. The days were slipping away faster than Captain Riley had anticipated. The human and Val teams worked side by side, pouring all their energy into building the device that could stabilize the collapsing star. The makeshift laboratory was a mix of human and alien technology, wires and tools scattered across every available surface. Yet, despite their best efforts, something didn't feel right. Every time they thought they had made progress, another obstacle appeared. As Riley paced back and forth in the lab, the weight of their mission pressed heavily on his mind. The Val had suffered long enough, and the idea that their world could end so soon was almost too much to bear. The human crew had come so far, but what if they weren't enough to save the day? Dr. Vasquez approached him, her face drawn with exhaustion. Captain, we've made some progress, but it's not enough. The device we're building isn't strong enough to handle the energy required. We need something from the Val, something that we still don't fully understand. Riley rubbed his temples, trying to think clearly. What are you saying, Dr. Vasquez? We've already adapted their systems as best we can. I know, but there's something missing. The Val have technology that is beyond anything we've seen before. They've been holding back. It's like they're afraid to give us everything we need. Riley sighed, frustration creeping into his voice. Do you think they're hiding something from us? Is there more that they're not telling us? Dr. Vasquez hesitated, then nodded. I don't think they mean to deceive us, Captain. But there's a history here, a history of rejection. The Val were once a thriving species, part of a larger galactic alliance. But when their world started to die, they were abandoned by the other races. No one came to help them, and over time, they stopped trusting outsiders. It's almost as if they're afraid of being rejected again. Riley stared out the window, his mind racing. He hadn't known about the Val's past. The idea that entire civilizations had turned their backs on them felt wrong. The Val were proud, intelligent, and advanced, but no one had come to their aid when they needed it most. They've been rejected by the universe, Riley murmured to himself. Abandoned, left to die. Dr. Vasquez nodded, her voice soft. And now, they're afraid that we'll do the same. They can't bear the thought of being vulnerable again. They've learned to survive on their own, and asking for help, it's a huge step for them. Riley turned back to face her, his expression hardening. So, you're saying they've been too proud to accept help, even when their world is falling apart. Exactly, Dr. Vasquez replied. They'd been so used to rejection that trusting anyone, even us, is terrifying. They don't believe that we'll stay. They don't believe anyone will stay. Riley stood still for a moment, feeling the weight of this new understanding. The Veil's rejection wasn't just about their star system or their planet. It was about everything they had lost, their place in the universe, their allies, their trust in others. And now, humanity was here, offering a lifeline, but could they accept it? Then we have to show them that we're different, Riley said, determination setting in his voice. We have to prove to them that we're not like the others. We won't leave them. We won't abandon them. Dr. Vasquez gave him a small smile, though it was tinged with sadness. You're right, Captain. But it's going to take more than words. We have to show them through our actions. We have to help them believe again. Riley nodded, his resolve solidifying. He understood now. It wasn't just about fixing the device or saving a planet. It was about healing the Veil's broken trust. If they could do that, perhaps the Veil would finally believe that humanity was their true ally, not just another civilization ready to turn its back when things got tough. With the universe rejecting them, the Veil had nothing left to lose. But perhaps, just perhaps, humanity was the hope they had been waiting for all along. The human and Veil teams had worked tirelessly, and now the moment of truth had arrived. The massive device that was designed to stabilize the dying star was finally complete. It stood in the center of the makeshift laboratory, a complex tangle of cables, glowing alien components, and human technology. It was nothing short of a miracle that they had been able to combine their systems, but the question remained, would it work? Captain Riley stood at the edge of the room, staring at the device with a mixture of awe and doubt. Sweat beaded on his forehead, the result of days without sleep. He could feel the weight of the entire mission resting on his shoulders. If they failed, the Veil would be doomed. If they succeeded, they might just change the future of two species forever. Captain, Dr. Vasquez called, pulling Riley from his thoughts. She stood beside the device, her face illuminated by the soft glow of the controls. We've double-checked everything. All systems are go. We're ready for the test. Riley nodded, though his stomach twisted with nervousness. Let's do it. We can't afford any mistakes. He turned to Tall, who stood nearby, watching the humans with a mix of hope and fear. Tall, I need you to be ready to help if anything goes wrong. You know your technology better than we do. Tall's large, glowing eyes met Riley's. I will be ready, Captain. But I do not know what will happen. This device has never been tested. If it fails, it will take us all. Riley nodded grimly. We'll take that risk. But we have to try. The room fell silent as the team gathered around the device. They all knew the stakes. A mistake here could mean the end of everything. The Veil's world would be destroyed, and humanity's reputation as a species willing to help would be shattered. Dr. Vasquez pressed a button on the console, and the device began to hum with life. The strange combination of alien and human technology activated, sending pulses of energy through the air. The machine whirred, its components glowing brighter with each passing second. For a moment, it felt like time stood still. Everyone held their breath, waiting for the first signs that the device was working. Then, a sudden jolt rocked the room. The ground beneath them trembled as if the planet itself was shaking. The device emitted a loud, sharp noise, and the energy readings on the monitor spiked dangerously. Something's wrong, Dr. Vasquez shouted, her voice filled with panic. The energy levels are too high. We need to shut it down, or we'll destroy everything. Riley's heart raced. No, we can't stop now. We have to stabilize it. Tall rushed to the console, his long fingers moving with unnatural speed. The Veil technology is linked to the device. If we shut it down now, we may never be able to restart it. The room was a chaos of flashing lights and warning alarms. Riley's mind raced, trying to come up with a solution. He glanced at Dr. Vasquez, who was frantically working to adjust the controls. "Can we lower the output?" Riley asked, his voice calm despite the growing tension. Dr. Vasquez nodded quickly. "I think so. I'll reroute the power and try to stabilize it." As she worked, Tal joined her, his hands moving faster than human eyes could follow. The tension in the room was unbearable, and Riley couldn't help but feel a sense of dread creeping up his spine. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the noise from the device died down. The glowing lights faded, and the shaking stopped. The room was still, the alarms silenced. Dr. Vasquez wiped the sweat from her brow and looked up at Riley. It's stable. We did it." Riley let out a breath he didn't realize he had been holding. For a moment, he couldn't move. The success of the test didn't mean they had won yet, but it was a huge step forward. The device was working, and the Veil's future was no longer hanging by a thread. Tal stepped forward, his eyes filled with gratitude. "You have saved us. You have saved my people, but there is still much to be done." Riley nodded. "We're not finished yet. We need to launch the device before it's too late." The stakes had only grown higher, but for the first time since arriving on the planet, Riley felt a small spark of hope. They had taken the first step, but the real challenge was still ahead. The night sky above the Veil planet was filled with swirling clouds, as if the world itself was holding its breath. Captain Riley stood on the balcony of the command center, staring out at the distant horizon. The device had been successfully tested, and for the first time since their arrival, there was a sense of hope. The plan to stabilize the dying star was finally in motion. But Riley couldn't shake the uneasy feeling that had settled deep in his gut. The Veil had shown so much promise, so much potential, but there was still something about their culture that didn't sit right. The division among their people was clear. Some had welcomed humanity's help, while others refused to trust them entirely. The longer they stayed, the more Riley felt the tension building beneath the surface. "Captain," Dr. Vasquez's voice broke through his thoughts, and Riley turned to face her. She was standing in the doorway, her face filled with concern. "We have a problem." Riley's heart skipped a beat. "What's happened?" She stepped closer, her voice barely above a whisper. "There's been a sabotage attempt." "Ril't no," she replied, her brow furrowed. "But someone tampered with the device. The energy readings are fluctuating. If we don't fix it soon, it could explode." Riley's mind raced. It couldn't be true. Everything had been going so well. But Dr. Vasquez's worried expression told him otherwise. This wasn't just an accident. Someone didn't want them to succeed. "We have to find out who did this," Riley said, his voice steady despite the storm raging inside him. "Get the team together. We need to figure out what happened." As Dr. Vasquez left to gather the others, Riley turned to Tal, who had been silently observing from across the room. The Veil leader looked equally troubled. "You knew this was possible, didn't you?" Riley asked, his voice low but pointed. Tal hesitated before responding. "There are factions within my people who do not wish for this alliance with humanity. They believe that asking for help is a sign of weakness. They have always resisted outsiders." Riley clenched his fists. "And you didn't warn us." "I did not want to believe they would act so recklessly," Tal replied, his voice tinged with regret. "But I feared this day might come. They fear what you represent, Captain. To them, you are just another species looking to control us." Riley took a deep breath. "We're here to help, Tal. Nothing more." Tal's eyes softened. "I know that now, but to others, your presence here is a threat." As Riley absorbed Tal's words, the realization hit him hard. The sabotage wasn't just an act of defiance. It was a sign of something deeper. A faction of the Veil saw humanity's help as a challenge to their identity, their power. They wanted to remain independent, even if it meant destroying their own chance at survival. The team quickly assembled in the control room. Dr. Vasquez was already analyzing the device's systems, trying to isolate the problem. Riley stood beside her, watching as the monitors flickered and glowed. "There," she exclaimed. "Whoever did this tried to overload the power grid. If we don't act fast, the device will tear itself apart." Riley's mind raced. They had no time to waste. They needed to fix the device and launch it before it was too late. But there was another problem. They didn't know who the saboteur was. The tension in the room was palpable as the crew worked together, trying to save the device from destruction. Then, the door to the control room opened, and one of the Veil leaders entered. His face was stone cold, and there was no hint of remorse in his expression. He was one of the ones who had resisted the Alliance from the beginning. "You think you can save us, human?" The Veil leader sneered. "You think you can fix what's broken? You're just another species trying to take what's ours." Riley stepped forward, his voice firm. "We're here to save your people, not to control you. But you don't have much time to decide. The device needs to be activated, or your planet will be lost." The Veil leader scoffed. "You're too late. The device will never work. We don't need your help." Riley's eyes narrowed. "You're making a mistake. Your people are running out of time." The Veil leader's eyes flickered with doubt, but he didn't respond. He turned and walked out of the room, leaving behind a feeling of cold hostility. Riley stood there, the weight of the situation sinking in. He had expected resistance, but this was more than just stubbornness. It was fear. Fear of change, fear of dependence on another species. The Veil were trapped in their own pride. As the human crew worked to repair the sabotage, Riley realized something. The mission wasn't just about saving the planet. It was about saving the Veil from themselves. They had to learn to trust again, not just humanity, but each other. And somehow, against all odds, Riley believed that they still could. The sun was rising over the broken landscape of the Veil's world. It had been days since the sabotage attempt, and the human team had worked tirelessly to repair the damage. Now the final test was about to begin. Riley stood at the edge of the control room, staring out at the planet's horizon, his thoughts heavy with the weight of what was about to happen. Behind him, the device hummed with energy, its massive form still standing tall despite the damage it had sustained. It was working, but would it be enough? Would they be able to save the Veil from their dying star before it was too late? Dr. Vasquez stood beside him, her face tense but determined. "We're ready, Captain," she said, her voice low but confident. "The system is stabilized. It's time." Riley nodded, his throat tight. This was the moment they had been preparing for. They had fixed the sabotage, repaired the device, and now it was time to launch it. But he knew the real challenge wasn't just the device itself. It was the hearts and minds of the Veil. As the crew filed into the control room, Tall entered last, his glowing eyes filled with a mixture of gratitude and uncertainty. He had spent the past few days working with the humans, trying to understand the device's full capabilities. He still didn't completely trust them, but he knew that without their help, his people had no chance. "Captain Riley," Tall said, his voice steady. I owe you more than words can express. You have given us hope when we had none." Riley turned to face Tall. "We're not done yet. You know that. We still have to launch this device and stabilize your star before it's too late." Tall nodded solemnly. "Yes, but whatever happens now, I will never forget what you've done for my people. You've proven that not all civilizations are as cold as the ones who abandoned us." Riley's heart ached at Tall's words. The Veil had suffered for so long, and now humanity had become their last hope. It wasn't just about saving their planet. It was about showing them that trust could be rebuilt, that alliances could be formed even in the most desperate of circumstances. The crew gathered around the control panel, and Dr. Vasquez began the sequence to activate the device. The hum of energy filled the room, and the monitors blinked to life. Riley's eyes scanned the readings, watching as the device began to power up. "Here we go," he muttered to himself, his hands clenched into fists at his sides. For a few moments, nothing happened. The device's systems whirred and clicked, sending ripples of energy across the planet's surface. Riley held his breath, waiting for the telltale signs that the device was working. The planet's atmosphere had already begun to stabilize, but it wasn't enough. They needed to redirect the energy from the star before it collapsed completely. Then, a sudden surge of energy filled the room, and the monitors blinked rapidly. "It's working," Dr. Vasquez shouted. "The energy flow is stable. The star's core is being stabilized." Riley's heart raced as he watched the data on the screen. Slowly, the once turbulent atmosphere of the Val's world began to calm. The planet's surface shook, but the worst was over. The dying star was no longer tearing the planet apart. "We did it," Tall whispered, his voice filled with awe. "You've saved us." Riley exhaled slowly, feeling the weight of relief flood through him. They had done it. The Vale's planet was safe, and their future was no longer uncertain. But there was still more to be done. The Vale had to rebuild, to learn how to trust again, to heal the wounds of the past. "I'm glad we could help," Riley said quietly, turning to face Tall. "But this is just the beginning. Your people have a long road ahead of them." Tall looked at him with a soft smile. "I know, but now we have a chance, and that is more than we've had in a long time." As the humans and Vale stood together, watching the stabilization of the star and the healing of the planet, Riley realized something. This wasn't just about saving a world, it was about forging a future. The universe had rejected the Vale, but humanity had shown them that there was still hope. And in that moment, Riley knew that despite everything, humanity had made a difference. The sun was setting over the Vale planet, casting a golden light across the landscape. The world had been saved, but the work was far from over. Captain Riley stood on the balcony of the command center, gazing out at the peaceful horizon. The star that had once been on the brink of destruction was now stable, and the planet was no longer on the verge of collapse. The device had worked. But the question remained, what would happen next? The Vale had been given a second chance, but their future was uncertain. They had been abandoned by the universe, left to fend for themselves. And now, humanity had stepped in to help. Riley knew that trust would take time, and healing the deep wounds left by centuries of isolation wouldn't be easy. But the Vale had shown them something important. They had shown humanity that even when everything seems lost, there is always hope. Riley turned as Dr. Vasquez entered the room, her face tired but filled with a sense of relief. "Captain, we've received some good news," she said, her voice filled with quiet excitement. "The Vale have begun working together. They're starting to rebuild their cities, and their leaders are beginning to trust each other again." Riley smiled. "That's good to hear. It's going to take time, but at least they have a chance now." Dr. Vasquez nodded. "Yes, and we're helping them too. We've shared some of our technology with them, and they're already making progress. It's slow, but they're not alone anymore." Riley's thoughts turned to Tall, the Vale leader who had once been so full of doubt. Tall had been the first to believe that humanity could help, but even he had been cautious. After everything the Vale had been through, trusting anyone seemed impossible. But now, with their planet stabilized and their future looking brighter, the Vale were starting to believe again. Tall had approached Riley earlier that day, his eyes filled with gratitude. "Captain, I cannot thank you enough. Your people have given us hope where none existed. But more than that, you've shown us that we are not alone. You've given us a chance to stand alongside you, not beneath you." Riley had nodded, his heart swelling with pride. "It's not about standing above or below each other, Tall. We're all in this together now. We're partners, not saviors." Tall had smiled, and for the first time since Riley had met him, there had been a true warmth in his expression. "Partners," Tall had repeated, as if the word itself was a new concept to him. "Yes, I believe you are right." As the days passed, the atmosphere on the planet began to change. The once divided Vale started to come together. their differences slowly healing. There were still challenges ahead, but the worst had passed. The trust that had once been shattered was beginning to be rebuilt piece by piece. Riley looked out at the horizon again, feeling a deep sense of accomplishment. They had done it. Humanity had done something no one else had been willing to do. They had reached out to a species in need and given them a chance to survive. It wasn't just about technology or scientific advancements. It was about compassion, about showing the Veil that they were not just a forgotten race. They were important, and they deserved to be saved. "We've made a difference," Riley said quietly, more to himself than to anyone else. "We've given them a new path." Dr. Vasquez smiled, her tired eyes sparkling. "Yes, Captain. A new path for all of us." As the light from the setting sun bathed the planet in warmth, Riley knew that the road ahead would still be difficult. But he also knew that humanity had helped to pave the way for something greater. The Veil had been given hope, and in turn, humanity had learned something invaluable. That even in the darkest of times, reaching out to help others can make all the difference. The future was still uncertain, but now it was full of possibilities. Weeks had passed since the successful stabilization of the Val star, and the changes on the planet were becoming more visible. Where once there had been destruction and despair, there was now a sense of purpose and growth. Captain Riley stood at the front of the newly built command center, looking out at the city that was slowly but surely being restored. The Veil were rebuilding, not just their homes, but their hope. Riley felt a deep sense of pride. Humanity had not only saved a species on the brink of extinction, but they had also helped restore the confidence of a people who had been abandoned by the universe. The Veil were no longer isolated. They had found a new ally in humanity, and with that alliance, they were finding a way forward. Dr. Vasquez walked up beside him, a soft smile on her face. "It's incredible, isn't it?" she said, her eyes following the workers outside, busy repairing and rebuilding the city. "It is," Riley replied. "We've helped them, but they're the ones who are making it happen. They've taken the first steps to rebuilding their world and their trust. It's more than we could have hoped for." The two of them watched as Tal and several other Veil leaders approached. Tal's usual serious expression was now replaced with one of quiet satisfaction. He had changed in the weeks since the device had stabilized their star. No longer burdened by the fear of extinction, he now stood with a sense of hope, leading his people toward a new future. Tal stopped in front of Riley, bowing his head slightly in a gesture of respect. "Captain, words cannot express what you and your people have done for us. You have not only saved our world, but have given us a future. We will never forget this." Riley gave a small smile. "It wasn't just us, Tal. It was a partnership. Humanity helped, yes, but the real strength came from your people. You took the first step in trusting us, and that's what made all the difference." Tal's glowing eyes softened. "Without your willingness to help, we would have continued down the path of isolation. Your actions have not only changed our world, but have shown us that there are others in the universe who care." Riley nodded. "And that's something that will stay with all of us. We're no longer just two species trying to survive. We're partners. Together, we'll build something better." As the Veil and humans continued to work together, the differences between them seemed to fade away. There were still challenges to face, still cultural barriers to overcome, but the bond that had formed between them was stronger than any obstacle. Humanity had not only offered its technology, but had shown compassion and a willingness to share the burden of rebuilding. And in return, the Veil had shown humanity that there was more to life than survival. They had shown the power of hope. As the sun set on the restored city, Riley felt a renewed sense of purpose. He had come here with his crew to explore the unknown and offer assistance, but what they had found was far greater than they could have imagined. They had helped save a planet, yes, but they had also forged a lasting bond with an alien species, a bond that would last for generations. Looking up at the sky, Riley thought about the future. It was uncertain, yes, but it was no longer filled with fear. The Veil had been given a second chance, and humanity had shown them that the universe was not as cold as it had seemed. The future, though unknown, was now something they could face together. "We've made it this far. Tall," Riley said, his voice calm but filled with certainty. "Now, we take the next step together." Tall nodded, his eyes reflecting the light of the setting sun. Together. And with that, humanity and the Veil took the first steps into a future built on trust, hope, and unity. No longer divided by the vastness of the universe, they were now united by the common purpose of helping one another. A new chapter had begun, not just for one species, but for two.